Hello, pro wrestling fans, family, and friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the History of Pro Wrestling. I am your host with the most. That is right. I am the one and only Joe Monroe. And tonight, tonight we're going to revisit the history of Scott Hall. I know we tried doing this live last night, but thanks to my stomach and thanks to everything else that's been happening this week, I feel like I have lived through the plague. I ended up kind of rushing through it, not feeling well, and I felt bad for it. So I decided to go ahead and do a pre-recorded episode for those on Facebook. And of course, this is already pre-recorded for those watching on the YouTube channel. But tonight we're going to talk about the one, the only Scott Hall, or as some people know him as Razor Ramon. Now,
Hey, yo.
Exactly. Hey, yo. Now, we will learn here in just a moment how many different names Scott Hall has had throughout his career. Some, not so bad. Others, well, eh, well, I want to show you something that we're going to do something new here if I have to do these solo. This is the sidebar cam. So anything ridiculous or anything that I think is kind of, out there is going to go here. That's right. We actually have a budget for another camera. Well, we're supposed to. I honestly don't know where this one came from. So we won't talk about it. But let's go ahead and let's get right into it. So Scott Hall started his career in 1984 working for Championship Wrestling from Florida, where he soon began a feud with Dusty Rhodes. He and Dan Spivey, who we talked about last week, started tagging together and would go up against major tag teams within that territory. And their names was the American Starship. Hall was under the ring name Starship Coyote, and Spivey was under the ring name Starship Eagle. What the heck was that? Starship? What are we building this city on rock and roll all of a sudden? Listen, I get it was the 80s, but come on now, guys. Well, I guess there were worse names. Anyways, back to the lesson. So they would move on and stay in Florida for a little while and would go from Florida to doing jobs with Crockett's promotion in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, even losing a match to Arn and Ole Anderson for the NWA National Tag Team Championships. And after leaving that, they joined Bob Geigel's NWA Central States territory based in Kansas City in 1985. They received shots at the NWA Central States Tag Team Championships, with the champions being, believe it or not, Marty Jannetty and Bulldog Bob Brown. If you don't know who Bulldog Bob Brown is, God, say that 5 times fast. Bulldog Bob Brown, Bulldog Bob Brown, Bulldog Bob Brown. Hey, I did it. But they ended up losing the match. Dan Spivey stayed in Central States territory for a brief period of time, then returned to the Carolinas and worked with Crockett. And Hall would stay in Central States. And then moving on to the AWA. Now, he stayed with the AWA from 1985 to 1989, and this is where he really honed his craft and met his best friend, one of his best friends, I should say, Curt Hennig, or as WWE fans will know as Mr. Perfect. Side note here, Curt Hennig's dad was actually huge in the AWA. If you want me to talk about them, the Hennigs in general, we can. I mean, there's 3 generations. There's Kurt's dad, there's Kurt, and believe it or not, there's Axel. Curtis Axel. Yeah, that's his son for those who didn't know. All right, well, back to Hall here. Well, all right, well, sorry about that little sidebar, but Hall would stay in AWA and would actually have tryouts with the WWF in 1987 and in 1990, but was unsuccessful. Then after moving away from the AWA, he would go to WCW for the first time in 1989. as recruited with Jim Ross trying to get younger talent, such as Brian Pillman and even Sid Vicious. They were just trying to get newer generation of wrestlers in with the NWA WCW, and it didn't quite work out. They would so we got hang on another sidebar here. So they named him Scott Gator Hall. So he's been known to look like Tom Selleck and I guess look like Burt Reynolds because there was a Burt Reynolds film called Gator, and well, I mean, let me bring the photo back up here. I mean, for crying out loud, look at him. He kind of looks like Gator. But during 1989, we will move on to this. We will move on to the Diamond Stud eventually. However, before becoming the Diamond Stud, he would wrestle in various promotions, such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, teaming with Larry Cameron. He also did stunts in Germany as Texas Scott. Poor Scott. And would go to the Puerto Rican territory and wrestle for WWC for the WWC Caribbean Heavyweight Championship, and he lost it to Super Medic. Actually, believe it or not, he won it from Miguel Perez Jr. and then lost it to Super Medic 3, winning it in March, losing it in April. Then in 1991, that's when we get the Diamond Mine. This is when we get the Diamond Stud. And believe it or not, believe it or not, this is actually when we get the ground basis for Scott's career. This is where we get introduced to the toothpick. This is when we get introduced to the long, greasy hair. Beforehand, you've seen he had like this little afro thing going on. Now he's walking out looking like, well, I mean, freaking take a look. He's looking like this. Which one was more intimidating? This one or this one? I mean, you decide. I mean, either way, Scott's legendary, but to be completely honest with you, I wouldn't want to mess with the Diamond Stud. But he would move on working with Diamond Dallas Page, and eventually was even teased to join the Dangerous Alliance, but it didn't quite work out. And with an injury in late 1991, that kind of sidelined him a little bit. But he would come back in 1992, forming short-lived tag teams with Vinny Vegas, Kevin Nash, and Scotty Flamingo, also known as Raven, as part of the Diamond Mine stable. And Stud would actually begin a feud with Dustin Rhodes, Dusty's cousin, and Dustin from AEW nowadays. Most people, like myself, know him as Goldust, or as Crander Q likes to say, the only man that ever made him speechless. Got your back, Crander. Then in May of that year, he would leave shortly after his last televised match as the Diamond Stud against Rob Campbell, not Rod. Good night, Irene Joe. Get your head in the game on May 8th of 1992, which would bring us to none other than the one, the only Chico Razor Ramon. Now, a little sidebar here. Let's go ahead and Razor Ramon was actually based off of Tony Montana's character in Scarface. They couldn't really come up with a character, so Scott goes, "Have you ever seen Scarface?" Vince goes, "No." Then Scott goes, "And forgive me for trying this and probably butchering. Say hello to the bad guy." That's probably terrible. I'm sorry, but that's how Razor Ramon was born, and that's how we got those awesome vignettes. Copyrights suck, or else I would show them. We got to get around that somehow, I swear. But he would debut as Razor Ramon in a non-televised match, even wearing the Diamond Stud gear. He made his first appearance with the dark match against Chris Hahn, H-A-H-N, Hanna, whatever, on May 18th of 1992. Later in his career, Hall claimed he pitched the idea of the Scarface character, during the meeting with Vince, and actually Pat Patterson was there. He said it was as a joke. But they loved it so much that they went with it. Then, after weeks of the vignettes, we finally got Scott Hall's first in ring televised match on August 8th, 1992, on the episode of Superstars, where he defeated local jobber Paul Van Digel. Digel? Whatever. But, he would go on with great success, winning the WWF Intercontinental Championship multiple times, having that awesome feud with Shawn Michaels, and essentially forming the Clique, uh, which consisted of himself, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, Sean Waltman, or as 1, 2, 3 Kid, or the Kid, Triple H, and you know what? Believe it or not, Just Incredible claims he's a member of the Clique, but I'll let you all decide on that. I'm not too sure on that. But he would stay and have great success in the WWF until 1996. Then in 96, this is probably where most of you kids probably remember Scott from his second WCW run. And this is when we get the outsider Scott Hall, which he did debut in. Hang on, I actually got something here. In this, he debuted in a jean vest, jeans, boots, and that's it. Actually, a little bit of a sidebar here. He played more of the Razor Ramon character than himself. But hey, if you've had success with that character, are you really going to fully break from it? No, because the bad guy character is Scott. So, you know, just saying. They even threatened to sue Scott, and uh, I think it was mostly Scott. But Kevin Nash was Kevin Nash, which honestly, I be completely honest with you, I don't know why they named him Diesel. I think that was like a Shane McMahon thing. We'll probably get into that in a later episode. Uh, but they ended up forming the Outsiders. And at Bash at the Beach, we ended up getting the third man of the Outsiders, forming the NWO. Now, I probably won't go too much into the NWO because we actually did a full roundtable on the NWO. And yeah, a lot of craziness happened. But Scott Hall personally won multiple tag team championships, won the WCW United States Championship, uh, had a shot at the WCW World Championship, but didn't win, which, you know, the War Games thing, he won it. So the man deserves. This is what aggravates me about Scott. The man never won the WWF/E championship. He never won the WCW championship. To be completely honest with you, if you want to know someone I think is underrated, aside from Owen Hart, that deserved a heavyweight title, Scott did. But in turn, on the other side, I can see why he don't need it. Scott was such a character within himself and carried himself in such a way. We looked at him as me personally at least, looked at him as a world champion. No matter what title he carried, even the television title that he ended up throwing in the trash. Yeah, we won't talk about that. Poor Hacksaw. But let me know what you all think. Do you think Scott Hall should have deserved at least the WCW World Heavyweight Championship? Or do you think, as Razor, he should have had a run with the WWF Championship? Me personally, I think WWF would have fit better, but it would have been nice to see him win the WCW title. Then in 2000, Scott's demons started popping up. I really don't like. I don't want to talk about the negative, but life happens, and um, Scott ended up having to leave. They released him in 2000. Um, that's why he mysteriously disappeared, which stunk because me personally, as a kid watching WCW, Scott Hall was one of my favorite wrestlers to watch. But that's all right because Scott was not going anywhere because he would go to ECW Japan and eventually back to WWE. Now, for those that don't know, WWF had to change the name to WWE due to the World Wildlife Foundation. Google it, kids. I don't have time to explain it tonight. It's just watch it. Just Google it and then get back with me. Now, actually, there is rumors that they're trying to bring it back, but I highly doubt it. Now, back to the Scott Hall. He would show up after departing from WCW in early 2000, and he was inactive for several months. Then, on November 10th of 2000, he made a surprise appearance at ECW in New York, teaming with Jerry Lynn to defeat Just Incredible and Rhino. And the following day, in Poughkeepsie, I think I said that right, New York, Hall defeated Just Incredible and then lost to Sal Garzino. Garzino. Oh my God. Big Sal. It's Big Sal. That's who it was. It's Big freaking Sal, the big Italian dude from the FBI. That's who he lost to. Which Scott in an interview said, he wants to help put over the next generation and younger guys. So Scott has a good point. Many people paint him as a jerk, but especially during that time, be completely honest with you, I think Scott knew what was best for business. And I wish he was still here. I would love to see him work with Paul Levesque right now. Could you imagine that? Whew, that would be great. But after a little while with ECW, he would go on to New Japan for a little bit, and he joined a stable there. And his tenure in Japan, he primarily teamed with Japanese wrestlers and old NWO cohort Scott Norton in a series of tag matches and 6-man tag team matches. He even wrestled for New Japan until September 2001, where his final bout began a title match against Triple Crown Heavyweight Champion Kazuya Muto. If I butcher that, I am so sorry. Then, of course, we all know the return, the deadly dose of poison that Mr. McMahon, there you go, I did my Briscoe impersonation for you, promised to inject into the WWF before they changed to WWE, and it was the NWO. And to be completely honest with you, much like the invasion, which we may get into that in another episode for the roundtable or something, that could have been booked so much better. But in wrestling, egos get in the way. And to be completely honest with you, it's like Kevin Nash said, it's like the ex-Confederate soldiers going to work for the Union now. You honestly think we're going to get chosen over their guys? Come on. So, yeah. But there's also the argument from Undertaker recently that said, why would we spend so much money on guys just to bury them? Well, if you have an ego like Mr. McMahon, you probably could afford to do that. That's just my opinion. Then Scott Stevens came back and he ended up getting released later on in 2002 after having an awesome match with Stone Cold Steve Austin at WrestleMania 18. And to be completely honest with you, I think he took one of the best stunners ever. And I hate to say, people want to say that's his WrestleMania moment. I'm sorry, Razor holding both Intercontinental Championships, which one was held by him, one was held by Shawn at the time. That was his Mania moment. That's just me, though. Now let's move on to TNA. Before you guys even start, I realize he did more stuff in the 2000s than TNA, like Juggalo Championship Wrestling and all that. But I mainly want to focus on the major promotions. No offense to the Juggalos, but Scott in TNA I think is underrated, except for 2010 with the band. That was. We won't get into. We actually went into that in the NWO episode, so go watch it. But back to the history of pro wrestling here. Now with his TNA run, he would go on facing the likes of Jeff Jarrett, Ron the Truth Killings, R-Truth for those that don't know, and multiple next generation superstars, or sorry, wrestlers. God, I need to quit watching WWE. And he would stay there off and on until 2010, and then unfortunately his demons got the best of him. We all have hit rock bottom, and I hate to say it, but I didn't think we was going to have the bad guy much longer there for a moment. But Diamond Dallas Page rescued him, just like he rescued Jake. And thanks to him rehabbing and getting Scott into better help and health, helping him with surgeries and everything, we got the bad guy back. And eventually would lead to this, the WWE Hall of Fame, and rightfully deserved. Um, I think Scott Hall, to be honest with you, is probably one of the most inspirational wrestlers ever. If you don't believe me, there is an episode of Jerry Springer when he was Razor Ramon where he gave the Intercontinental title that he physically worn to the ring to two kids that were fighting. I think it was AIDS or some kind of other disease. That was just the type of person he was. I mean, people suffer with their own demons, but what makes you stronger is when you face them head on, especially if you have help from friends. And that's exactly what Scott had. Then he would make sporadic appearances after that for the WWE, even making an appearance at WrestleMania whenever Sting took on Triple H and the NWO was there. And he would make sporadic appearances on Monday Night Raw. Even made an appearance on Global Force Wrestling, or was announced as part of the roster, but 5 days later he was like, "Nah, bro, I'm good." Uh, then on looks like also in January 2016 he took part in a World Association of Wrestling television tapings at Epic Studios in England. Uh, and in 2006, Razor Ramon was backstage at WrestleMania 32 celebrating the new Intercontinental Championship with Zack Ryder having his WrestleMania moment. And I think that's pretty cool. Uh, then Hall would eventually wrestle his last match on June 17th of 2006, defeating none other than Chuck Taylor for the DDT Ironman Heavyweight Championship at First Wrestling in Des Moines, Iowa. He would lose the title the same day by forfeit after getting tricked into saying, "I give up" off a sheet of paper. Ah, God. Then on Raw 25, that's when Hall, as Razor Ramon, even though I think you should just name him Scott Hall, had a little reunion in the Balor with Balor Club and the Revival, uh, and had just a great time with it. Uh, and he would also make sporadic appearances on other Monday Night Raws. Uh, so the bad guy was always lurking back. He wasn't completely gone anymore. He was back. Uh, then eventually, a few years later, the wrestling world ended up losing Scott Hall, and that shock. I know his health probably got the better of him in the end, especially everything that happened battling his demons. But if you look at it from a video game person, let me go here to this camera real quick. If you look at it as from a I'll put it in for you gamers, video gamers perspective. If anybody could have a Red Dead Redemption type storyline in real life, I would say it's a tie between Jake Roberts and Scott Hall. Oh heck, it could be both. But I hate that we lost the bad guy, but he did leave us with great memories. And to be completely honest with you, he will never be forgotten. Um, the quote that he said at the Hall of Fame, I'm going to try to bring it up because I don't want to. I did not prepare for this, but I want to go ahead and bring this up real quick, and I just want to quote him on this camera. He stated at his Hall of Fame speech, "Hard work pays off. Dreams come true. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do." Probably one of the best inspirational quotes ever. I mean, even someone from the UFC Hall of Fame this past year said it. So Yeah, Scott Hall, one of the best, and in my mind is one of the most underrated wrestlers ever. I'm not saying he's underappreciated. I just think we can all say what if all we want to, but could you imagine him being on top as a world champion? Given if all the stars aligned correctly. But then again, as I stated earlier, Scott's one of those people that didn't need it. He was so charismatic that just like very few, I'll include Owen Hart in this. He didn't Piper even. He didn't necessarily need a world title. He was the bad guy, and the bad guy will live on forever. I mean, there's even people paying tribute to him this day, and I think that's amazing. So Scott Hall um, is one of those people I wish I could have met in real life to say thank you for everything that you done, because personally, God, I rooted for him every time. Even as him being a heel, I rooted for Razor or the NWO Scott Hall. He was just he was the bad guy. But sorry to bring the mood down, but that's what I think about Scott Hall. Probably went too quick and didn't discuss major points that should have been discussed, but in WCW we probably talked about those on the NWO episode. And the Razor Ramon stuff, I mean, go watch it yourself. Go on YouTube, go on Peacock. There's a lot of stuff that you can watch about Scott Hall. A lot of stuff that you can learn from him. Again, I didn't want to talk about the negatives about Scott. I know that he went through a traumatic experience early on in his life, accidentally unaliving someone. I mean, yeah, that can mess up anybody. But he pushed through it. He pushed through it, dadgummit. And we ended up getting to see him probably in his best years. Because not only did he deserve get into the Hall of Fame, but he also was able to go to the Performance Center a time or two and teach a thing or two to the next generation of professional wrestlers. And I still think to this day, if people would go back to watch his matches, you can learn a thing or two. That's with anybody. If anybody could, if you're willing to take your time and you really love and appreciate this sport and you want to hone your craft, watch old tapes. Sometimes the classic stuff in professional wrestling is a lot better than some of the flippy flop stuff. And nothing against, acrobatic wrestling or anything like that, but some of the basic stuff's almost obsolete. So Scott would be one of them that I would highly recommend somebody who wants to hone their craft or even get into the business to study and watch. Because he was one of the best bad guys ever. I mean, hell, he was the bad guy. But that's the episode. And that's all I'm going to leave off with. Now, Friday, we'll start our brand new episode of the Superstar Series Spotlight, where we're going to talk with good buddy of mine, Joe Gold. We're going to go back to the Gem City days, talk about his career there. And also, well, heck, let's shout out some events that's happening. Looks like tomorrow night in Monticello, Indiana, looks like Next Generation Wrestling is going to be there. So go check that out if you're up in Indiana. Now, next week, there's a few events. It looks like EWA, which is great promotion. Go check them out. Next weekend, they're going to be back in Richmond, Kentucky. So get your butts there as soon as possible. Doors open. You see right there on the flyer, and we will continue to promote them. They do not pay us. I just ask if we can promote them because they're really good friends of ours. Also, my old stomping grounds, traditional Southern wrestling, is going to be at the G.R. Hampton Elementary School in Barberville, Kentucky, that same day. So if you're in the Kentucky area, it looks like there's two great uh, promotions that's going to be happening in different areas of the state. So for those who are saying while we talking about the old stomping grounds, well, I admit made some mistakes and I said some stuff I kind of regret saying, but this is the future. And I'll say it once and I'll say it again. On my show, The Joe Monroe Show, our goal is to grow and support any and all professional wrestling, no matter what style or no matter what other people's opinions are about they said promotion. We need to support instead of bashing it. Which reminds me, if you don't mind, a little shameless plug here, go to our website and go follow us on our various promotions. Or not promotions, but various. Oh, goodness gracious, what am I trying to think of here? Oh, yeah. Social media outlets. As you can see there scrolling, but also go check out our website there because our brand new Shut Up and Enjoy Pro Wrestling shirts are officially out now. So if you want that shirt, which a lot of people like that saying, and to be completely honest with you, that's what most people nowadays need to do is to shut up and guess what? Enjoy professional wrestling. Just shut up and enjoy it. Quit complaining about it. You complaining ain't going to help. Go buy your shirt. If you want to support the show, you know, I try to make it as cost efficient as possible for you all. The lowest prices that Teesprings will allow me to make it. I'm not here to get rich off of it. I just want to see, especially that shirt. That would be cool to see that shirt go everywhere because people do need to shut up and just enjoy wrestling, just like back in the day. Sure, I mean, you can complain about some stuff, but why complain when you can just be like, they messed up. They're human. It happens. But that's it for the show today, folks. I hope you all enjoyed. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, follow, and subscribe on all of our social media outlets. And I hope you enjoyed the show, and we cannot wait for our very first episode of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight series. We will see you all next week, where I guess, dare I say, it's going to be the show of the Golden Joes. I'm kidding. We will see you all next week. You all take care, stay safe, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and enjoy next week. And always, always, always support the crazy sport of professional wrestling. And for all you trolls, just shut up and enjoy it. You all take care now.